Hey, John Bartell here. California is king of film and video production. And it's all thanks to the state's incredible landscapes and cities. For over 115 years, Hollywood has used the state's mountains, deserts, and coastlines as their blockbuster backdrop. As a travel reporter, I visited many of these iconic film locations, and now I want to take you to some of them. First stop, we're heading to the Hollywood of the Bay Area, Niles, California. Long before Clint Eastwood and John Wayne dominated the Western movie screen, Bronco Billy was the top cowboy.
Every week they would make a Bronco Billy Western and a Snakeville Comedy, which was a Western comedy series.
Bronco Billy's real name was Gilbert Anderson, and not only was he a silent film star, but he also was a co-owner of the S&A Film Manufacturing Company.
S&A as a whole made 2,000 films, and only about 260 survived.
David Kine is the president of the S&A Silent Film Museum, which preserves the bygone era of movie memorabilia. The S&A Film Company produced a majority of their movies just outside Fremont, California, in the small town of Niles, because it was always sunny and the canyons were a perfect backdrop for the westerns. S&A shot hundreds of films in Niles, some of which included rising stars like Charlie Chaplin, who made 5 films here, including the wildly popular comedy The Tramp. What ultimately ended silent films?
It was the Talkies jazz singer in 1927.
Unfortunately, the S&A Film Company never transitioned their films to sound, and by the 1930s, the company faded away and their studio was torn down. Balboa Island in Orange County was once a muddy, uninhabitable flatland, but one land developer's dream turned it into a paradise for Hollywood stars. Carnival rides, expensive beach bungalows, and frozen bananas. Today, Balboa Island and the Newport Peninsula is a popular vacation destination, but prior to 1899, it was a barren mudflat that property developer W.S. Collins had big plans for.
In a real estate gamble, created a man-made island off the shores of old California.
You become rich?
No, he lost everything and went broke.
Eventually, the city of Newport Beach took over the island, and over time, Hollywood elites like John Wayne, Shirley Temple, and Humphrey Bogart fell in love with the island and built homes here.
Many of his films partly were shot on Balboa Island or in Newport General.
Filmmaking on the island dates back to 1917, but one of the most popular TV shows filmed here was Gilligan's Island.
The mate was a mighty sailing man, the skipper brave and sure.
Episode when the boat leaves the shore and they're singing, they're going off on a 3-day tour, they leave from here.
Well, we don't have the money, Pop.
So there's money in the banana stand.
More recently, the cult classic Netflix show Arrested Development regularly shot here and highlighted Balboa Island's famous frozen banana shops.
Banana? Fuck! No, New York doesn't have it, Italy doesn't have it, it's here, California, Balboa.
Today there's a number of competing frozen banana shops, but Mia Hook works for Sugar and Spice, the first company to start selling the Balboa Island treat. Oh yeah.
Yeah?
Yeah.
Good?
Not good. All aboard the Movie Express, next stop Jamestown to do a little time traveling. In the movie Back to the Future 3, that locomotive that Michael J. Fox and Christopher Lloyd are trying to get up to 88 miles per hour in is actually the Sierra No. 3, better known as the Movie Queen. This iconic steam engine has been in dozens of movies. It's located at Railtown 1897 State Historic Park in Jamestown, and I had the chance to take a ride in it. Are we going to be able to get this thing up to 88 miles per hour?
Not with me on it.
No. Well, when Hollywood needs some epic waves for their next blockbuster, they head to the Santa Cruz coast. It's the birthplace of California surfing, and the gnarly waves in this area bring in pro surfers and movie stars from all over the world. Santa Cruz Surfing Museum gives a glimpse of wave riders past. Jumping the cliff at Steamer Lane is almost a rite of passage for any young surfer in Santa Cruz.
This is one of the best surf spots of the world. It's really famous, people know all about it.
The reason it's so famous is because people have been surfing here since 1885, after 3 Hawaiian princes introduced the sport to locals while on vacation.
They brought surfing here, and they'd actually made the boards.
Bob Pearson is a world-renowned surfboard maker and likes to show museum visitors the progression of surfboard manufacturing.
Years and years ago, there was no fins on boards. So these things act as little fins and hold control.
Surfboard control is something that Bob has mastered. In his younger years, he surfed at Mavericks Beach, which is home to some of the largest waves on the West Coast. And because of his experience, he was asked to make boards for the 2012 film Chasing Mavericks.
What are you talking about? The biggest wave in the world. Mavericks. It's real.
I made them all the boards for the movie, 240 boards.
Bob also acted in the film alongside Gerard Butler and Johnny Weston.
It was all about the local surfers. It was a good story about them. It was accurate as hell. It was a great movie.
More than a dozen surfing-related movies and TV shows have been filmed in Santa Cruz, including Beautiful Wave, Back to the Beach, and Swell. The reason they filmed here is because the waves are consistent. Korbel's California's oldest sparkling winemaker, and their vineyard in Sonoma County ends up being the perfect spot to film explosive war scenes. Not because the vineyard owner wanted to be in the movies, but because they wanted to get rid of some pesky tree stumps. This is the Korbel Bottling Factory, the oldest and largest champagne production facility in California.
We did 18,000 cases the other day.
Since 1882, Korbel's California champagne has been at some of the most iconic celebrations in American history, including every inauguration since Ronald Reagan.
We were the first ones in America to make champagne.
The word champagne is only reserved for wine made in the Champagne region of France, but because the Korbels hired a Champagne region winemaker, and they won a series of lawsuits, they were allowed to call their sparkling wine California Champagne. Hollywood discovered the Korbel Winery in the late 60s while filming the World War II themed TV show Combat, starring Vic Morrow. TV producers persuaded Korbel to allow the combat scenes to be filmed on the property by promising to blow up and remove old stumps in the vineyard.
They blew out over 1,000 stumps in 6 months.
Well, whether you're celebrating the end of a war, a new year, or a presidential inauguration, Korbel put California on the map for premier champagne production. Coming up next, our famous California film locations takes us to the mountains of Truckee, the backdrop of over 200 films. More when Bartell's Backroads returns. You're watching Bartell's Backroads, famous film locations edition. When Hollywood needs a snowy backdrop, they head to the railroad town of Truckee. With over 200 films shot in this location, filmmakers are not just looking for a snowy backdrop, they're also looking for easy access. Jack London, Charlie Chaplin, Al Pacino, and Tom Cruise. For over 100 years, Hollywood's biggest actors have traveled to the snowy little mountain town of Truckee to make movies. How many films were shot up here in Truckee?
I'm up to 219 films now.
Greg Zerbel, president of the Truckee Donner Historical Society, has been documenting Truckee's rich movie history since it first started back in 1910.
Well, Jack London had a lot of early movies. He was actually one of the earliest movie producers up here.
Jack London's Alaskan Gold Rush adventure novels inspired many films in the 1910s and 1920s. Charlie Chaplin even came to Truckee to make one of his most famous films, The Gold Rush, in 1925. Like, why did they choose Truckee? I mean, was it
because
convenience?
the train will get you to the middle of the snow without any hassle.
After roads were built over Donner Pass, more people visited the area, and it allowed for new movie plots, like the 1990 psychological thriller, Misery, starring Kathy Bates and James Caan.
James Caan was driving down old Highway 40 above Donner Lake in a 65 Ford Mustang and went off in the snow and crashed.
Here it comes!
And one of the most recent films shot in the area was the 2023 blockbuster Top Gun Maverick.
Do you think the movie making up here helped put Truckee on the map?
Oh, definitely.
What do Route 66 and Snoopy have in common? Well, if you head to the desert town of Needles, you'll find out. This remote railroad stop played a surprising role in inspiring a few familiar characters. If there's one thoroughfare that embodies the spirit of the American road trip, it's Route 66. The 2,400-mile highway connects Chicago to Los Angeles. And Needles, California is the last town on the historic highway before leaving the Golden State into Arizona. It's been a landmark for travelers because of its pointy needle-like mountains nearby.
People on Route 66 broke down here and then ended up living here. You'd ask them, how'd you get here? And they said, broke down.
Before Route 66, trains brought people to Needles. The town was a busy change station for passengers who often stayed the night at the Harvey House, which is located across the street from the museum.
The actress was Topeka and the Santa Fe must be fair.
This once popular chain of railroad restaurants and hotels famously only hired well-maintained young women in black dresses as the waitresses.
Judy Garland had a movie about the Harvey girls.
When Route 66 was built, it brought even more travelers to Needles, and some residents you may or may not recognize.
Is this Snoopy here?
No, this is Spike. This is Snoopy's brother.
Cartoonist Charles Schulz lived in Needles for a short time as a kid, and the desert town and his memories were portrayed in several of his cartoons.
But Charles Schulz had a dog at the time that he lived here, named Spike.
When Interstate 40 was built, it bypassed Needles. The town is not as busy as it used to be, but if you're not in a hurry, you can still take the historic Route 66 through town and capture the spirit of the classic American road trip. At the junction of Highway 41 and 46 in San Luis Obispo County, there's a roadside memorial dedicated to the late actor James Dean. It's a tribute to his films and his tragic death. In 1954, James Dean became a Hollywood star. Within a year, he was in blockbusters like East of Eden, Rebel Without a Cause, and Giant. But on September 30th, 1955, he was struck and ultimately killed by another driver at the intersection of the then Highway 466 and 41. The intersection has changed to Highway 46 and Highway 41 since Dean's accident. In his honor, the area has been renamed James Dean Junction, and a small roadside memorial was created so fans of his movies could leave keepsakes in his memory.
So about 25 miles down Highway 46 is Blackwell's Corner General Store, and this is where James Dean made his last stop.
They said he bought some apples and a Coke, and after chatting with his friends, he drove west.
The two James Dean murals outside the store attract a lot of visitors. Inside, you can eat at the 50s-style diner or peruse the many James Dean artifacts. James Dean had a short acting career, but his death affected a lot of people. When filmmakers of the 2004 desert drama Hidalgo needed a Middle Eastern look-alike backdrop, they headed to the Oceano Dunes in San Luis Obispo County. The movie follows lead actor Viggo Mortensen on an adventurous horse race through a deadly desert called the Ocean of Fire. The dramatic seaside finish line sequence was filmed just outside the town of Oceano, famous for its towering dunes and top-tier sandboarding terrain, something I learned about firsthand, and it's much harder than it looks.
All right, ready or not, here we go. Yeah! Yeah!
But unlike snowboarding, the sand is much harder than the snow. When Bartell's Backroads returns, we go wine tasting inside Francis Ford Coppola's movie gallery, and then we visit the small town that was the backdrop for a Clint Eastwood film.
John Bartell here. I'm gonna make you an offer you can't refuse. Head over to Sonoma County's wine country and grab yourself a glass of vino. Then check out Francis Ford Coppola's movie gallery. His winery is home to an extensive collection of movie memorabilia. Get out of here.
I'm gonna make him an offer he can't refuse.
The Godfather. Apocalypse Now.
The car of tomorrow, today.
Whoa! Tucker. These are some of filmmaker Francis Ford Coppola's most recognizable and awarded movies, and some of the most recognizable props from those movies end up here at Coppola Winery in Geyserville.
All the film memorabilia here at the winery is authentic.
Just down the hall is some never-before-seen storyboarding from Coppola's 1979 Vietnam War film, Apocalypse Now.
Well, we have pieces from behind the film camera and set pieces that just Francis was working on.
Lillian says Francis is a very hands-on and detail-oriented filmmaker. He was involved in everything from set design to costumes, like the ornate dresses in Bram Stoker's Dracula.
And this was a dress worn by Winona Ryder.
Upstairs is where you'll find memorabilia from the Godfather trilogy. Most notable is Coppola's handwritten preferred casting list, which he wrote before he even made the movie. And outside is the band shell used in Godfather 2. Fun fact, they shot this scene at Lake Tahoe.
This was the band shell in the scene where he's taking favors in his office, and then you cut to the party and there's a huge party going on.
Whether you're here for the wine or the memorabilia, Francis built this place so his admirers didn't have to go to Hollywood to enjoy all that he makes. The remote Humboldt County town of Willow Creek has a long history of Bigfoot sightings, so it's no surprise that the filmmakers of the 2024 fantasy drama Sasquatch Sunset chose the forest around Willow Creek to make their movie. The odd comedy follows the family of Sasquatches that live their mythical life. Every year in the town of Willow Creek, they hold the Bigfoot Parade. Back in 2021, I took a tour of the town's Bigfoot Museum.
So this is the holy grail of like Bigfoot research.
Yeah.
The redwood forest of Northern California has been the backdrop of multiple iconic films. In Star Wars Return of the Jedi, Princess Leia meets Ewoks and then fights off stormtroopers in Grizzly Creek Redwood State Park. In the movie E.T., Elliot got the bike ride of his life in Redwood National Park. And you may recognize this scene from Jurassic Park 2 in Fern Canyon.
And he ends up falling from the redwood forest down into Fern Canyon. The little dinosaurs start to munch on him and attack him. He jumps over that log where you see the stream coming under, and his blood flows through Home Creek after they munch him down.
Every year, Table Mountain in Butte County attracts hordes of people during wildflower season, but few visitors take a detour across a covered bridge into a little-known film location graced by Henry Fonda. This iconic red-covered bridge is the entrance to Oregon City, California, a beautifully preserved ghost town with nothing more than a one-room schoolhouse.
How did Oregon City end up in California?
Because there was gold discovered here early on.
Butte County Historical Society volunteer Larry Mouch says when the California Gold Rush started in 1848, wagon trains from Oregon were the first to arrive and stake mining claims.
But wherever those people ended up, oh, this is Oregon Gold. Oh, this is Oregon City. You know, they started naming everything after Oregon.
At its peak, Oregon City had a population of about 1,200 people. The town's stores served nearby mining camps, and a school was built for the nearby children. When miners couldn't find any more gold, Oregon City turned to farming and ranching. The population slowly declined, and the old schoolhouse was turned into a community center. And for a short time, it served as a Hollywood movie set.
You think we can keep dodging the cops?
For a while. In 1977, the Oregon Schoolhouse was converted into a jail for the movie Last of the Cowboys, starring Henry Fonda, who plays a truck driver that took a group of prostitutes with him on a cross-country road trip.
They took that one-room school that's in there and they put a jail cell in there, and they had Henry Fonda in jail.
After the break, we head to Solano County, where Clint Eastwood spends his day filming in the town of Bird's Landing. More famous film locations when Bartell's Backroads returns.
All right, we're all through with our journey of California's famous film locations. Next stop, we're heading to Solano County, where Clint Eastwood made quite the impression on the little town of Bird's Landing.
Throw your arms
miles around this honky-tonk man.
Well, Honky Tonk Man wasn't his most memorable movie, but when the cameras were set up to film Clint Eastwood's 1982 American musical Western comedy, it sure was memorable to the townspeople of Bird's Landing.
I've never seen so much chaos in my life make movie. I mean...
Though chaotic, lifelong resident John Benjamin says his rural town was an ideal backdrop for Clint Eastwood's character, Red Stovall, who was a traveling musician bouncing around small-town America with his nephew.
About what's the population here?
About 13.
13 people.
John Benjamin says Bird's Landing wasn't always so small. In the late 1800s, it was a bustling port town, founded and named after businessman John Bird, who built the wharf, which attracted schooners full of people to work or buy crops from local farmers.
That was jumping. There's a lot of activity back then. They supposedly had a 300-piece brass band.
Hundreds of people either lived or worked in the town, John Benjamin says. There were hotels, warehouses, and this old general store, which John Benjamin's family ran for many years. Unfortunately, a series of fires burned down many of the buildings in town and the people left. John Benjamin says one surviving building is the old brothel, which John owns and now lives in.
You sleep where many have slept.
Again.
These days, wind turbines outnumber the people in Bird's Landing. Though it's secluded and quiet, John Benjamin says the town's not dead, but he'll be here when it is.
Basically stayed here just to watch the place die, because I could see that's what it was doing.
The Blob! Well, you can experience more California destinations by downloading the ABC 10 Plus streaming app. Find other Backroads episodes under the Show tab. Scroll down to Travel and Bartell's Backroads. Download the free app on your smart TV. I'm John Bartell. Hope to see you on the Backroads.